Hi there, this is Billy Earl on Pack 14. We do shows many times that involve people who are distinguished citizens. We did a show last week on John Wright, who's retiring from the UUFS Fellowship over on Old Ocean City Road. But we are absolutely thrilled today to have Earl Campbell here from Eastern Shore Undercover. It's a page that I absolutely watch every day. I get such good news coverage for things that won't show up on other platforms for a couple of days, and if they are, maybe it's just not as complete an information and data dump as you would like. But Earl, I really want to thank you for coming by today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Tell me about you. Who is Earl Campbell other than a famous football player?
I get that a lot.
I know.
So I grew up in Baltimore. I lived there till 2002.
Yeah.
And then we moved down here. I wanted to be a seasonal police officer with the Ocean City Police Department.
Okay.
So I did a year with the police department as a seasonal, and then I was lucky enough to get hired full-time. I went to the academy, became a canine officer with the police department. I did a little over 10 years with the police department, and then I left. When I left the police department, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I left on kind of a spur of the moment. So I literally went out and bought a camera, and I was just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. There was a event down there called the Do Tour. And it was only there for about 3 years, and then they got the Coca-Cola, or I'm sorry, the Pepsi sponsorship, and kind of kicked Mountain Dew out. But I took some pictures of the Do Tour, and I got lucky. I met the right guy, and it led into a career of photography.
Okay.
So I did photography all the way up until COVID. And then, of course, when COVID hit...
That changed everything.
It changed everything. It really did. It shut down all the events. There was nothing for me to do. And, at the time, I would get very frustrated because as a photographer, I would get the same press releases that other media agencies would get. And I would read them, and I'm like, that's not what this media agency said. And it used to just really baffle me.
Okay.
So I told my wife one night, I said, this just isn't right. I'm like, these other media agencies are spinning this, and I understand it's all about, engagements.
Eyeballs.
They have to have people watching them for sponsorships and, all their ads. And I said, I'm going to start a media outlet.
Okay.
I'm going to start a news agency. And it goes back a little further, and I got to give a little bit of a credit to this, to James Simmons, who is the director of tourism here in Salisbury.
Okay.
And I sat down with him one day. I used to be the photographer. I did the Governor's Challenge. I did the World on the Shore at the Civic Center. I did a lot of the community events. And I sat in on an event, and James, we were walking out, and he said, Earl, you should start you should start your own news agency. And it always stuck in the back of my head, and I'm like, yeah, one day maybe.
Interesting comment on his part.
Yeah, so COVID hit, and I had nothing to do. I was sitting around, I was bored, I was driving my wife crazy. So I said, I'm going to start this news agency, and I did. I got on Facebook, and I started it out. My daughter had just moved out, so we went out and bought a little scanner. She's in her own place. We want to make sure we know what's going on around her when she's living by herself. So I wanted to have the little scanner there on the table when we're watching TV, and if I heard something happening around her house, I'd call her and I'd say, hey, make sure you're a little careful. Well, that turned into, hey, I can post these calls when they come out, and people would want to do the same thing that we want to do. We want to know we worry about our families. So that's what I did. I started doing it, and I sent out 50 invites, and that was it. Facebook allows you to send 50 invites at a time.
Got it.
And I sent them out. And it was crazy. They were like, hey, can my wife follow the page? And I'm like, sure, I don't care.
Yeah.
And can my brother sure, I don't care. So I changed it from a private page to a public page, and it just kept growing. And I always attributed, I don't know if you guys remember that movie back in the early 80s. It was a plant that just kept growing and growing and growing. And Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
And the plant kept growing and growing and growing. Well, that was Eastern Shore Undercover. It just kept growing, and it never stopped. And it is what it is today now.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any metrics to determine how many?
I do. So when we first started, it was just Facebook. It wasn't anything else. But then we started growing, and I said, well, I better get a Twitter page, and I better get an Instagram page, and I better get a YouTube page. And I went out and I got all the different platforms. And Once you hit about 50,000 followers, Facebook will send you a message and say, "Hey, you got too many comments coming in. We're kicking you out. You got to get a third-party platform." Yeah. So we had to jump on we went through, it was a lot of growing pains. We went through various different platforms to find out what was the best for us.
Okay.
And we deal with, God bless my wife, she deals with most of the comments. Unless there's an issue, then she sends them to me. We deal with about 5 million engagements a week.
Jiminy Christmas.
So it's sometimes it's more, and we're getting ready to come into the busy season. Summer is always super busy. So we will get much more in the summer than we do in the winter, because most time the winter pushes people inside, and it's just a different kind of crime.
Yeah.
So we do about 5 million just on Facebook.
Gee,
and then we have
I knew it was popular, but I had no idea you were generating those kind of numbers.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize it neither when I first started this, is that, if I put a post out like this morning, and just say, for instance, it's a larger event, and there's 250 shares of the event. Well, if everybody has 1,000 followers, that one post is reaching a tremendous amount of people.
Right.
So.
Okay. So this is kind of how you got started. Do you have platforms or people that have influenced you that you are, I would say, owing of any of your style or any of your approach?
Not really.
Or you out there by yourself?
I like to think I'm unique. A lot of people try to give me advice like, don't do this and don't do that. You're doing this wrong. People are never going to advertise with you. And I've always stayed true to the principle that I'm just going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And if people like it, great. And if you don't, move on.
Move on.
And that's just the way I do it. And, everybody's like, well, you're never going to get advertisers. I'm like, well, I don't care if I get advertisers. That's not how I've based my business. We are very lucky that we are one of the top Facebook pages in the entire state of Maryland.
Yeah.
So when you're a content creator like that, Facebook and Meta will compensate you. So I've went from being a photographer, making pennies and dimes, to being able to afford, my house from Facebook.
Wow.
So I've turned it into a full-time job now, and I get up every morning. My alarm goes off at 5:20, and I work until, roughly midnight. So it's a lot of work.
That's a long day.
It is. I take a lot of breaks in between. If I want to go to lunch, I go to lunch. It's one of the good things is I can take that little pager with me wherever I go. So.
What do you consider to be the most interesting piece of content that you've encountered?
I think the most interesting thing that we do is how we help the community.
Uh-huh.
Like I never ever dreamed we would be able to do some things that we do for the community. Like for instance, dogs.
Yeah.
Like everybody always asks me, how do you find so many dogs? And I'm like, it's nothing that we do special. It's just everybody follows the page.
Right.
So if you're driving up the street and you're like, hey, I saw that dog, and then you get on Eastern Shore undercover at nighttime, you're like, hey, I just saw that dog. And it's just, it really works out. And it's, at one point we were keeping track of all the dogs we had, and this was like maybe 18 months ago. We had reunited over 350 families with their dogs.
Uh-huh.
My wife loves it. My kids love it. And I never wanted to do that. And we had stopped for a little period of time doing that. And we caught so much backlash from the community. They're like, but this is so beneficial. And I'm like, all right, we'll do it again.
Wow.
So, but I now have a website where people can go on and do it themselves. So it saves me a lot of work from having to get in there, take the picture, crop it out.
Right.
Now I have a website where they can go on. If your dog's missing, you go on, you put it on there, you put out where he last seen, your information, and then it automatically sends it over.
I'll be damned. Isn't that great?
Yeah, so it makes it so much easier.
Tell me about this fisticuffs at local high school.
Yeah, I tell you these.
Because I got my attention.
Yeah, these kids these days. I tell you, I listen to the radios, and I give so much credit to these teachers and the administrative staff. They really have their hands full. Unfortunately, we live in a world today where kids are growing up and they're just not the same level of respect as it was when I was growing up or when you were growing up.
Does not appear to be that way at all.
And they'll fight and they'll assault teachers. They'll assault police officers. They don't care. It's just what they see on TV, and it's very unfortunate. And this morning, of course, we were listening and we just heard a lady yell out on the radio, please help. And it went from that to the deputy keying up. Every school has a school resource officer.
Yeah.
And the school resource officer got on the radio and said, send me more units. I need more units here. And within minutes, there was Salisbury City arrived, and more Wycomico County Sheriff's Office deputies arrived. We are very blessed that we have some really good deputies and officers around here.
Yeah, I agree.
And they really, the things that have happened in the past over the last couple of years and losing some officers really creates an urgency that when a brother or sister calls out, we need help, the cavalry comes to help them. And that's what happened. And got it under control very quickly. There were a couple kids that ended up going to the hospital.
Really?
They got sprayed with OC spray.
OC is what?
Mace. Back in the old day was mace or tear gas, or not tear gas, but it's a olerism capsicum
Yeah,
or
hot
something
stuff.
like that. Yeah, it makes you burn. I'll tell you, I've had it. I've been sprayed 3 times from the academy, seasonal academy, regular academy, and then I had to go through a reservice after I left the police department.
It doesn't sound like that much fun.
It is not. It is probably. I will tell you this, in all honesty, if you give me the chance of being tased or being sprayed with OC spray, I'm going to take the taser every single time.
Really?
Yes, there is no question about it.
That's something.
And different people react to it differently.
Yeah.
But it literally makes everything that's mucus in your body come out your nose and your mouth.
Right.
I mean, it's horrible. It is the worst feeling.
Well, it's interesting. When I come in here, usually it's to either do an interview like this or it's to edit that film for rebroadcast either on PAC 14 or on YouTube. And the conversation generally kind of follows this, what's new and interesting. And undercover comes up all the time. Did you see about? Did you hear this? Did you see that little dog? Did you see any of these things?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because before that, there wasn't anything like that here, was there?
Well, there's been a couple pages that have tried to do this, but they've kind of faded out. They'll do it like for a couple of days and then they would stop, and there was never anybody that really dedicated the time to it.
Okay. And
I told my wife when we started it, if I'm going to go into this, I got to do it fully. I'm not going to do it, partly here and partly there. And if I'm going to do it, we're going to be there for the community. We're going to do it every day. We're not going to take days off. And we're going to do it, and it has turned out what it is. Is
your scanner really your major source of info? Or do people pick up the phone and call you?
It's funny. When I first started this, it was 100% scanners.
Okay.
I couldn't get any information from the police departments. I couldn't get anything. And there was a growing phase where police departments started trusting us more.
Right.
And they would, give us more information. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to go through the whole thing, and I trademarked my business. I'm going to get a trademark news agency.
Yeah.
And I did. I went through the whole process. I got a great attorney, Arlette Bright. She did all the paperwork for me. And I went through the whole process. I got the whole trademark. And then when I started doing that, I would send it out and say, look, I'm a trademark media agency.
Yeah, right.
And then I just opened it up. And then everybody, we'll send you some press releases here and we'll send you some press releases there. And people realized that we were telling the truth. We were putting out what they were sending out and not what, would get.
In essence, you were helping them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'll tell you this I was a police officer for many years, and I always tell people that I can get more information off of this page than I could ever do as a police officer. Because people have learned to trust us. And people have learned that, look, I can tell this guy that, Johnny did this and Johnny did that, and he's not going to rat me out. He's not going to. And that's what it's happened. There's been some murders right here in Salisbury that we have had played a part in and give them video. And so it's a little bit of everything.
Interesting. There's a lot of discussion on Facebook type pages about the crime rate in Salisbury. Either I live in a cocoon or I'm just not self-aware when it comes to things like this, but I don't see it. But I think there are statistics that may very well validate that theory. What's your thoughts on that subject?
Well, a few things. One of the things I always hear on the page, and people comment about it all the time, and they say, Salisbury is a little Baltimore. You'll go on the page and you'll see it at least 10 times a day.
Okay.
And I will tell you from somebody that lived in Baltimore that those people have never been in Baltimore. Because Baltimore is a different animal than here. Do we have crime here? Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's crime everywhere. The men and women of Salisbury Police Department, they work their tail ends off. And I'll tell you that they are one of the busiest agencies around the shore. Hands down, There's no question about it. I listen to Caroline County, Wycomico County, Worcester County, Somerset County. I listen to all the different agencies. And I'll tell you that Salisbury, they truly are one of the hardest working agencies out there. But you have to take that into consideration of what they're dealing with.
Right.
There's a lot of inner city crime that happens. There's a lot of, it's gangs that are in Salisbury that, in Ocean City, you're not going to have that issue. So it's a different kind of crime. Now, forward 30 days from now, Ocean City's going to be dealing with all the June bugs.
Right, yeah.
So it's a totally different ballgame then. That radio won't stop. It'll be going from morning to night. There's no stopping. You're lucky if you eat your lunch in your car.
Right.
Whereas Salisbury City really doesn't have to deal with that. So it's just a different type of crime. And you add in the Maryland State Police where they're doing more of the traffic and they're doing more of the crashes and they're doing more of the larger scale investigations. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of fatal crashes here in the last couple of days. And
isn't that amazing?
It's terrible, and I don't know what it is. It's a full moon last night. I'm hoping it goes away and these crashes go away. Memorial Day weekend coming up, so it's always a busy weekend.
Well, it's interesting. I've got a bunch of friends that hang out down at Guitar Man. Mm-hmm. They're on 13. And they were all sitting there the day that motorcycle came up north. And, it was like a shot out of a cannon. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that resulted, in an unfortunate death.
Yes.
But it just seems like, and this could be completely anecdotal, it just seems like people are prone to violence quicker, that they're very much less safe on the highway because of their own negligence. Yes. And it's not necessarily even people going to and from their work, although there's a lot of speeding on 13. A lot of it is these motorcycles and it's kids, because they're doing some really athletic things on a motorcycle, but I know it freaks people out. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wary when I see them, coming up the road like this, going, 60 miles an hour, with the front end of the motorcycle, up. I'm a little bit, envious of them because I used to ride a motorcycle and I could never get the front to go up like that. But on the other hand, I'm sitting here thinking, this is a kid. This is an 18 to 22-year-old kid who is invincible until, of course, he hits a truck.
Yes.
And then invincibility becomes a very moot issue.
Mm-hmm. And what's really unfortunate, and I will post those type of calls, and people get on there and say he play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and it's a juggling act because we have to really figure out, okay, well, is that okay to keep on the page? Is Facebook going to be upset with that? And it's what really you have to think about in situations like that is the families.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that are suffering. The young man or woman that loses their life, they did it. They're responsible for their own actions. But it's the families that suffer, and it's the moms that are crying because they've lost their sons or their daughters, or it's the grandfathers that have lost their grandson, granddaughter, brothers and sisters, and that's the part that you really don't think about when it's something like that happens. We're dealing with it now. There's a young man that's in pretty bad shape from a crash that just happened, and some of his family is against what he did, and the other family are like, you should be supporting him, and incidents like that, I wish kids would look at it from a different angle and look at it from, you're going to put your parents in this position.
That's right.
But they don't. Like you said, they're invincible.
That's not what kids do.
No, they don't. And they hang around their friends, and, I tell my kids all the time, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Right.
And it's the truth. It really is. And you hang around crap long enough, you're going to start smelling like
ne'er-do-wells.
Yes.
My dad was in law enforcement, and I used to hear that term, and my sister still is. Mm-hmm. Ne'er-do-wells, and I didn't really, I didn't take that term and attach it, to a specific type of person. I think as time goes on, I think I'm better able to do that. Mm. Let me change track with you for a little bit, because you wrote something that really got my attention, and I very widely circulated it. It was your analysis of the new mayor of Salisbury and what you felt he was doing in terms of a good job, in terms of a balanced approach to this. It was exceedingly well written.
Thank you.
So kudos to that. but I shared it with everybody on my page because I do some political things kind of on the side. But it resonated. I mean, it really resonated on my page. I know I got a lot of response saying, yeah, good, he's right. He's on top of it. And I thought, wow, in a world where we have so many people who want to say that Salisbury is a terrible place to live and they don't know why they're living here. They don't like any of the politicians. They're all crooked. They're all, morons, etc. They don't like bike lanes. They don't like obliques. There's a whole long list of stuff that people don't like. This was just a breath of fresh air to say, okay, let's be objective for a minute and let's talk about something that's really important to the city, and that's leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's everywhere. One of my biggest things that I don't know if you followed the page from the beginning, but I absolutely hate politics. Can't stand it. It's the biggest headache that I have. And you see everybody gets crucified for the bad things they do, but you never see the good things that they do.
Oh, never. No.
And there's a lot of good stuff that happens around here, and I'll be the first to tell you that I was very critical of Mayor Randy Taylor. I've never met the man. I don't know him. What happened before he got elected, I disagreed with, and I was very vocal about it. But when I'm wrong, and I'm, the right thing to do is to stand up and say, hey, look, I was wrong here.
Well, that's exactly what you did, and I'll tell you, it was just, like I said, a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And more so I do that for my kids. So my kids, I have 3 daughters, so that they realize that, hey, look, if you're wrong, just admit you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's easier to beg for forgiveness and say, hey, look, I was wrong with this, than it is to continue on, let it blow up, and then before you know it, you have a monster of an issue on your hands. And I do it all the time. If I make a mistake on the page, I'll gladly admit, look, I was wrong there. And that's what happened. I think Mayor Taylor, I think he has he inherited a large issue.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't there when the bike lanes were put in. He had nothing to do with that, but he's going to take the blame for it because of the position that he's in.
Yep.
He wasn't there for a lot of these buildings that were being built, the parking lots, and and I see a lot of that, and whether you like him or not, that man had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but now it's in his bailiwick.
Yeah, so now if he turns around and he makes it absolutely perfect and he changes everything, well, he's still not going to get credit for it. I
don't know that that's possible in Salisbury at this point, because no matter, as an example, the $100 million performing arts thing down where the library is, that's an incredibly complicated issue, and there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of money, but there's a lot of people out there who comment on my page saying that this is wrong, that the city doesn't need to spend $100 million to put that there. Point in fact, the city's not putting $100 million in there. This money is coming from SU. There is a transfer of some valuable assets, and part of that is moving the library over to what used to be the Ward Museum, which... And the criticism there is, well, how can we put a library over there if it's infested with this mold? It's going to kill everybody.
Right.
Well, guess what? They're going to fix it.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things, and I've seen this now more than ever, if there's anything I've learned in the last 4 years, it's learn to be patient. If there's anything, it's the greatest asset that I have now is I'm more patient than I was 10 years ago. Because a lot of times what happens is people jump the gun and they're like, well, this is not right, and they don't know the facts.
They don't know the facts.
And there could be a reason behind it, but no one knows that. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. I took a lot of heat for this. I mean, it was all over. There was an incident in Delmar where a church got investigated.
Okay.
There was no charges filed, not that I'm aware of.
Was that the molestation charge?
Well, I don't. It's no one really knows what happened. But everybody was saying, there's sex offenses and there's this and that.
Right, yeah, okay.
And I'm like, and everybody kept sending me the article, and I'm like, I'm not posting that, because if I post that and I don't have any information about what really happened, then I'm just as guilty as everybody that's out there embellishing this. So I didn't post it, and there were some people that took offense to it, and they're like, this is ridiculous, you're not posting the real news, and I'm like, but what is the real news? Do you have a press release from the...
Boy, isn't that a great question, though?
Yeah.
What is the real news?
So if I get a press release, and I don't care who it is, if I get something from a law enforcement agency or a government agency and I can prove it, I'll post it.
Yeah.
But I'm not just going to take your word
right.
that Johnny kicked this dog.
Right.
When Johnny might not even been there.
Yeah.
So, and people don't like that. They don't like the fact that I kind of make sure that things are what they are.
What a world we live in.
It's crazy.
No, verification is not is a greater crime. That's just nuts.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you this: where are you headed with this?
That's $1 million question.
I mean, I'm hoping that you're on, NBC, every night at 9 o'clock.
No, because I hate these cameras. There's the encryption. There's the battle with the encryption.
Yeah.
And it's a major issue. When we first started out, we only covered Wycomico County.
Okay.
And then we started getting people saying, well, your name is Eastern Shore Undercover. You should be covering the whole shore. And I agreed to do Worcester County. And then I agreed, all right, I'll do Somerset County. And now I do basically the whole lower shore. The encryption's made it very difficult.
Okay.
Because you can't listen to what's happening.
Yeah.
And, there's the whole issue has started with Worcester County, and now it's coming to Wycomico County. They're getting ready to do the Wycomico County channels here shortly. So when that happens, I just hope that my connections keep me informed on what's happening.
Walk us through what the encryption issue is technically.
So basically, the encryption it's not just here on the shore. It's basically across the state, and it's I don't want to. I'm a very pro-police page. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's followed the page knows I'm a very pro-police page. But there's sometimes when there's checks and balances, and I think the community having the ability to have information is very important.
Right.
I think that if there's a crash on Route 13, and I can prevent you from driving in it and creating more traffic jams, that's a good thing. And if there's a shooting that's 1 block across from your house, and you're in your wife out on a porch, and you open your phone, and you see that, you can go inside and keep you and your family safe. And I'm a firm believer of that. And there's a lot of stories that say, well, this is an officer safety issue. And I'm here to tell you it has nothing to do with officer safety.
Okay.
And I encourage anybody to go to any officer that's worked the road and that actually got involved in stuff and ask them, are you worried about a scanner? And 99% of them are going to tell you, not at all.
No.
There was, and I was very vocal about it. Sheriff Lewis, Sheriff Crisafulli, they said, hey, we're doing this for officer safety issues because we're finding these things on the street. Well, the Freedom of Information Act gives you any information you need. So I went right to the sheriff's department. Fill out the little form and they give it back to you. There's none that have been caught, none. So I have a big issue. If you keep telling me, there's hailstorms that are ruining my car, but I go back and look, and in the last 5 years, there's never been a hailstorm.
Never been.
That's a major issue to me.
Okay.
And I always look at it as what's the real cause. So the reality is here, and a lot of people don't like this, but Sheriff Lewis doesn't want to be bothered.
Okay.
And that's the whole issue about it. You can go back and look at the emails that he sent me, and I made them all public. I presented them. He doesn't like it when his friends and family contact him for a story that's on Eastern Shore Undercover.
Okay.
I can't help that. I did everything I can. I even put out posts out there 2 years ago saying, listen, please stop calling Sheriff Lewis. Please stop doing this. I don't think it's fair that because he is bothered, he takes that right away from the citizens.
Okay.
I don't agree with it. I think it's totally wrong. And I've lost that battle because it's already a done deal. They're going to encrypt the channels. But I'm hopeful that in the next election, whoever gets that position will come to their senses and say, this is a very important asset that we have. And they will change it back.
Okay.
It's just a flip of a button.
So you have 3 daughters.
I do.
Okay. Are any of them inclined towards going undercover?
Absolutely not.
No.
All 3 of them hate it.
That's Dad's thing.
Yes, that's Dad's thing. It wasn't even Dad's thing, to be honest with you. I never dreamed I'd be in this position. I thought I would just be a photographer for the rest of my life. I was very happy doing it, and then COVID hit, and here we are.
Well, you found an opportunity and then jumped right in.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's crazy, like the things that you could do for helping the community. Like, we use our money for different things, and like I don't even know how many, but there's so many people that, like, children that we've buried, and little things like that people don't see of, and we don't put it out there in the public because if you're going through that hard time in life, you don't need more drama.
Probably not. Probably not.
So we just don't put it out there, and we have families that need food, and they'll send us a message. I don't get my check until Tuesday, and
Right.
my wife, she's got the biggest heart in the world, and she'll just go get them groceries and take them to them, and if we can verify it. Now, I'm not going to do it for everybody that calls and says, hey,
Right.
I need food. But
Yeah.
if we can truly tell that people need help, do everything we can to help them.
There are people out there that are going through that right now.
Yeah, it's a tough world. It really is. It's a really tough economy.
Earl, I really want to thank you for coming by. This has been a great example, and this is part of a continuing series called Citizens of Distinction. And these are people that help. These are people that put themselves out there, and they do things to help our community, where I live, where you live, where we all live. And they do it with a sense of pride and with a sense of duty. And it would be a better world, I am convinced, if everybody had that inclination and did it. Earl, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please tune back in. We don't know who the next guest is going to be, but if it's anybody as cool as Earl and John Wright, then you can't turn that dial. Pack 14 and YouTube. Namaste.